everyone, happy Monday. Serena here from Whole Shift Wellness. I hope everybody's doing fabulous today. So, I have a bit of a big announcement to make, big deal to me anyways. It is a self-experiment that I'm gonna embark on from today for the next 2 weeks. And before I share with you what it is exactly that I'm gonna try on for the next 2 weeks, I'm gonna kind of just give you a brief idea of how I came about this. So, as most of you know now, I have been fully plant-based since 2014, so 5 years now. And I am a firm believer that shifting towards plant-based eating is the single most impactful thing you can do to improve your level of health, fitness, well-being, and overall mind-body confidence. It is one of the greatest things I've ever done for myself, and it's actually sparked transformation that has exceeded my greatest expectations. This is not to say that you have to be fully plant-based in order to get the benefits of eating more plants. We advocate shifting in that direction to whatever extent you feel comfortable doing at this moment in your life, bearing in mind that as close as fully plant-based as you can get is the healthiest that you will be. Now, with that said, up until this point in my life, well, first of all, let me just clarify. I honestly thought that I had achieved the pinnacle of ideal nutrition for myself. I thought up until recently that as far as nutrition goes, that I had pretty much established what it is that works best for me, which is a fully plant-based, unprocessed way of eating for the most part. I mean, we do go out once a week and I indulge in whatever the vegan dish available is. But for the most part at home, I eat fully plant-based, unprocessed, and no added fat, or virtually no added fat. So the only really fat in my diet comes from either the naturally occurring present in legumes, which is not very much at all, not much nuts or seeds, 1 tablespoon of flax seeds ground in the morning, and that's pretty much about it as far as my day-to-day way of eating goes. So it's pretty much 80% comes from whole grains and starchy vegetables, so 80% of my calories come from carbs, and then the remainder is 10% protein and 10% fat. That was pretty much roughly, and I don't obsess over macros, but up until this point, that has been the macro split that I thought worked best for me, that I have been adapting and enjoying and not really questioning. And obviously we're all different, not everybody's the same, and I'm not advocating that everybody should eat the way I eat, but I thought up until recently that was the ideal for me, that's what worked best. And I honestly genuinely thought I was never going to question that split, and that I had achieved as the greatest nutritional balance I possibly could in my life. However, I still was experiencing some very mild issues, which my gut feeling was telling me were relating to nutrition. And I have since had a very interesting, fun conversation with a doctor I really admire, who runs a health center in California called the True North Health Center. And they help people achieve the greatest level of health through clinical fasting, water fasting programs, which is a really powerful tool. I'm not going to delve deep into it because that might take the whole freaking live session. But anyways, it's a bit like pressing a reset button on your health and well-being and kind of starting again from scratch. And it allows you, by reintroducing food gradually into your diet, it allows you to identify any possible allergens or anything that might not work very well for you. And so we got talking with the doctor, and we were looking at obviously at my eating plan, and he was saying, I honestly thought I went into it with a little bit of an arrogant stance, because I thought that there was very little I could improve in my diet. And so in order to kind of overcome these very mild issues, I honestly thought that he was going to tell me something along the lines of, you're doing as good as you can when it comes to eating, let's try the intermittent fasting, that might be the water fasting, that might be the solution. However, interestingly, and that was very humbling, he found quite a few things that I could be doing better revolving around nutrition. And he said to me, it was like, yes, your worst eating days are still better than the average. However, if you're still experiencing these mild things, it obviously shows that there are still a couple of things that you could be doing better. And the fasting might help you press a reset button, and then by introducing things gradually, you'll be able to identify what you can get away with. And some of the things he mentioned I could consider cutting down is coffee. No! I don't drink a lot of coffee. I only drink 1 coffee a day. And I know that coffee is not great for you. However, if you can get away with drinking it without having any particular side effects, I think that's fine. With me, given the specific issues I was expressing to him, he said, maybe you can't get away with even that 1 cup of coffee that you drink every day. So that was one of the things that he said. Interestingly, the second thing he mentioned was green tea, which is my second preferred source of caffeine. And obviously green tea is amazing, it's got amazing health benefits to it, and which generally speaking, counteract the fact that it's still a stimulant and it still contains caffeine. But he said, maybe given what you're experiencing, you can't get away with green tea either. So those were the 2 first bullets I had to take. And then we went down the route of glutinous grains. And that was another little humbling moment, because he said to me, do you eat grains that contain gluten? And I said that I do. And he said to me that maybe that's another thing that I need to look at eliminating. And I'd like to open a quick parenthesis on this, because I have always been very much a proponent of gluten is not necessarily the issue in many instances. The issue with the whole gluten-free kind of advocacy revolves around the fact that most people consume gluten in the form of processed foods. That's their main source of gluten. It's actually highly processed carbohydrates. I have spoken before about how processed carbohydrates are not ideal and they are to be reduced as much as you possibly can. And so I always thought that the whole thing about gluten was very much just a bit of a misunderstanding and a misconception, because the real problem with gluten is processed carbs rather than the naturally occurring gluten in whole grains such as oats and wheat and whole wheat and all that kind of stuff. However, the doctor said to me that there are some instances where somebody might actually display a sensitivity, which is not an allergy. I'm not talking about celiac people. Those are allergies that are very serious and to be taken seriously. And so in my case, because of the small issues that I'm trying to get rid of, he said maybe actually glutinous grains are to be eliminated as well. Lastly, as if this hasn't been traumatic enough for me, he talked about fruit, and I eat tons of fruit, so much fruit. And again, you know, there's the whole kind of low carb movement out there which opposes to a high consumption of fruit, and I always thought that there was a bit of a craze and that didn't apply to me. However, the doctor said maybe you need to do more veggies and less fruits, and just play around with your macros. Anyways, to cut a long story a little bit shorter than it actually is, I got a bit thrown off by this conversation because I thought I was doing pretty well, and although I knew that these small ailments I'm dealing with might be helped with nutrition, I honestly didn't think I had to question my macro split as much as I actually do. And yeah, it was humbling and a great learning experience. Interestingly, what has happened at the same time is that a friend and cardiologist doctor based in the US, whom I adore and highly respect, has done a self-experiment on herself, which is quite rebellious because she's also fully plant-based. However, she decided to try a plant-based ketogenic diet. She obviously was eating very similarly to me, kind of 80% carbohydrates, completely unprocessed, whole food, plant-based, but she was finding, which I have found as well in my experience working with our shifters, that not everybody responds equally as well to that way of eating. Generally everybody progresses, but not at the same rate and at the same speed. And a lot of doctors have recently done some experiments around plant-based ketogenic diets, and some of them have had incredible results, such as Walter Longo, who does fasting mimicking ketogenic plant-based diet. Has done some clinical studies around it. But anyways, my friend has tried it for herself for 2 weeks, and I followed her through this self-experiment with a very open mind, thanks to my own personal challenges of the past few weeks, which forced me to open my mind. And she has inspired me to try it out for myself. And if you've seen any of my previous videos, or if you follow me regularly, you'll know that in the past I've been pretty outspoken against keto diets, and I want to clarify right now that I am still very, very much of the opinion that an animal-based ketogenic diet is quite risky, and I would never recommend it, nor would I ever try it. And the science is clear on that, because by massively increasing the amount of animal products that you consume, and animal fats in particular, you're putting yourself at huge risk of cardiovascular disease and other diseases, chronic disease in general. So I will never try an animal-based ketogenic diet, nor would I ever recommend it. And in my experience and my knowledge, the science is clear on that. However, plant-based ketogenic diet is profoundly different for a number of reasons. Number one, you're obviously not upping the amount of animal products that you consume, which is what carries the chronic disease risk, but you're also consuming huge amount of fiber, which most ketogenic diets are very deficient in, as much as 80 grams of fiber a day. And we know that fiber is perhaps the most essential nutrient because it's the one that we tend to lack the most. You're also getting huge amounts of micronutrients from all the vegetables that you're consuming, and the plant-based source of healthy fats such as walnuts and olives and tofu, flax seeds. So I am willing to give that a go. I've started today. It's a radically different way of eating from any way I've ever eaten before, really, but especially since shifting to plant-based in 2014. My macro split, which for the first time in a very long time I'm actually going to have to monitor, especially to begin with, is going to be roughly around 70% of my calories coming from fat. So I'm going to go from 10% to 70%. And then 10% will be protein and 10% will be carbohydrates. The goal is to stay within a range of 20 to 40 net grams of carbohydrates. And by net, it means excluding fiber. And it's gonna profoundly transform my plate for the next 2 weeks. Let's see how this goes. This has kind of stirred a little bit of a conversation with many people in my life and my clients as well. And I'm doing it for me first and foremost to see what it is, how I feel, if it does improve the small issues that I want to overcome. I'm also doing it for our clients, our shifters, to see if it is indeed a tool that I may add to my toolbox that might benefit some people more than others, perhaps those that don't respond equally as well to a high carbohydrate diet. And you know, I will never stop putting myself at issue because that's what I preach, and so I'm gonna practice it on my very own skin. And I'm not gonna lie, it's quite challenging mentally, and it is going to be different, radically different. And I am a mixture of excited as well as a bit nervous, just to see how it all goes. I don't want to flood my main feed with updates on these because it might get a little bit boring for some people, but I know that there are many people out there who are actually interested and would love to see how I get on. So what I'm going to do is I have a nutrition group which is kind of sat dormant for the past couple of months, so I'm going to kind of bring it back to life and post daily updates in the group. So if any of you want to follow me through this 2 weeks trial to see what it's like and what I get out of it and what my plate looks like and the ups, the downs and anything else, just type yes in the comments or DM me, or the easiest thing is for you to type yes and I'll add you to the group so that you can follow me for the next 2 weeks as I embark on this mind-opening plant-based ketogenic journey for 2 weeks. And yeah, we shall see what happens. The moral of this story for me so far, as of today, I might change my mind in 2 weeks, but as of today, the moral of the story is you never know. Keep your mind open and never assume. Always be willing to learn something new, try something new, because I believe I will never be done learning, but also I believe I will never be done self-developing, and the only way to continuously grow is to be willing to accept that you might not know everything, and there might be things out there that you haven't quite explored that might teach you something new. And in any case, whether this works for me or not, I know that I will learn new things that I wouldn't have if I just had kept doing the same thing over and over again. Change is uncomfortable because it takes more energy than sticking with the same thing over and over again, and because it makes you question yourself That's where I feel the discomfort comes from. However, in the long run, I think resisting change is way greater risk and greater discomfort and greater danger, because the one thing that you can be sure of in this life is that things will change. Change is a fundamental part of life, and so resisting it is kind of like resisting life itself. So I am humble in my open-mindedness to trying something new and see what I discover, in the hope that it might benefit not just myself but also everybody around me and the people I work with. Let me know. Type yes if you want to be added to the group. Let me know, and we shall see. Wishing everybody a fantastic week. Ciao for now.